Good morning to everyone near and far. On behalf of Prism Scientific Services, myself, Venkat, as a conference director, very happy to welcome you all for the Australian Hydrogen Startup Virtual Summit, organized in collaboration with HGQ, Queensland Cluster, and National Energy Resources Australia to address the complexities of new entries in these emerging hydrogen market, and will focus on inspiring and educating young startups and entrepreneurs to get into this new industry value chain. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the many lands on which we are meeting right across Australia today and pay respect to the elders present, past, present, and emerging. Also, given our global audience, I'd like to extend my respect and acknowledgement to First Nations people right around the world. It's not just a conference, it's a community to build our hydrogen industry together and unlock the potential of Australia to be a key player in an emerging global hydrogen industry. The virtual forum brings together impactful speakers and panelists to present and discuss innovation and success under the aegis of entrepreneurship for small, medium businesses as they recount their learning and experiences, share their insights on building an entrepreneur ecosystem for starting up, developing a sustainable energy business and practices that enrich their ventures. I would like to greatly thank Paul Hodgson, Dan Hinson, and HQ team who are instrumental in shaping this excellent and thought-provoking agenda on the hydrogen startup ecosystem. And of course, I have to thank Priya for the idea behind organizing this meeting. Also, we would like to thank Providence Asset Group for sponsoring the event and pitching competition with Providence Smart Future Early Stage Venture Capitalist Fund, and your support for the startup in this sector is priceless. We also would like to thank our supporting partners, Stellar Recruitment Australia and New Zealand's first trusted recruiter across 9 industries, and Asia Pacific Hydrogen Association. With no further ado, it's my privilege to introduce our conference chairs, Dan Hinson and Paul Hodgson, and invite to have their introductory comments. A few lines about them before we start. Dan Hinson. Dan is a chemical engineer by background and has 20 years of experience in the oil and gas, refining, petrochemical, and chemical industries, and more recently in alternative energy, waste, and hydrogen. She has proven track records and leadership positions in project delivery, operations, process optimization, business improvement, and risk management areas, in particular with Australia Pacific LNG mega project for Origin Energy. She has founded many successful projects and initiatives with Origin Energy, delved into a few startups in food and e-commerce before founding Viridius Energy, a venture turning unrecyclable plastic waste to hydrogen, and the HTQ Hydrogen Cluster, industry cluster based in Brisbane. HTQ, formerly HTQ SEQ, is a non-profit organization actively supporting Queensland and Australia realize the economic, social, and environmental opportunities that currently and emerging hydrogen solutions present. HTQ draws on the combined skills of entrepreneurs, subject matter experts, corporations, and then R&D to deliver hydrogen capability for the regions and contribute to developing the ecosystem that enables hydrogen adoption. HTQ will build capability, scale, quality, and reputation amongst members and result in increased high-value regional jobs, revenue, investment, and exports. Now, Paul Hodgson is a Brisbane General Manager, Innovation and Stakeholder Engagement for the National Energy Resources Australia Industry Growth Centre. He works with stakeholders to increase the productivity, competitiveness, and export potential of the energy resource sector. NERA is leading the establishment of a national hydrogen technology cluster and a number of regional hydrogen technology clusters through a currently open seed funding program. The clusters will drive crucial collaboration across the emerging hydrogen value chain, building the scale and capabilities of existing industry startups, scale-ups, and SMEs, and further leveraging and developing these technologies that will sustain a clean, innovative, competitive, and safe hydrogen industry. Paul has qualifications in international businesses and sustainable development and has spent over 20 years exploring the competitiveness of business, industries, and regions, and designing and implementing strategies to improve performance through innovation and collaboration. Thank you very much, Dan and Paul. Over to you now.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Venkata, for the kind introduction. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the Energy Oceania Australian Hydrogen Startups Virtual Summit. I'm passionate about solving environmental challenges using engineering and startups, where hydrogen is a perfect marriage of the two for me. The hydrogen industry is in its startup phase itself, which offers opportunities as well as challenges for entrepreneurs. Add to that a dash of pandemic, which means to thrive as an entrepreneur, you must be open to different and innovative ways of doing business. To grow the hydrogen industry requires ecosystem building, partnership, collaboration, and digital reach, which is what led me to found H2Q. If you're interested in being a member of H2Q, you can contact me by LinkedIn or click on the sign up button at the H2Q LinkedIn page. I am really delighted to be co-chairing this summit with Paul, who I respect greatly as he has mentored me on my startup journey and supported me in founding H2Q. I must give credit to Paul, NERA, RDA Brisbane, the H2Q leadership team members, Aurelia, Renata, Andy, Andrew, and Alex, due to the progress that I've made with their support. I must also thank Prism Scientific for this opportunity, the organizers of this event who have worked tirelessly to bring this event to fruition, as well as our distinguished and wonderful guests, speakers, and panelists who have given their time and are imparting their knowledge. I hope you enjoy today, and I will now hand over to Paul.
Well, thank you very much, Diane. And look, thank you, Venkata and Diane, and everyone involved in today. It takes a lot of people to bring an event like this together. So congratulations to everyone. And welcome to everyone joining us wherever you are around the world today. Thanks, Diane, for your kind words. It was hydrogen and clustering that actually, indeed brought us together earlier this year. And it's been a fantastic year in a very extraordinary year, I must say, but a lot of progress making on hydrogen almost unabated. Along with Diane, I'm honoured to be co-chairing such an international webinar with an impressive lineup of speakers and panelists. It's a very amazing topic, hydrogen energy, considered a significant potential pathway to facilitating a low emission world. And NERA, as the Energy Growth Centre for the energy resources sector of Australia, is focused on maintaining and growing Australia's position as a global energy powerhouse, a sought-after destination for investment, and the leading source of knowledge and solutions. We've much of the ingredients to be a major producer, user, and exporter of hydrogen energy, but we're really keen on ensuring that Australia also develops a strong hydrogen knowledge sector, with startups, scale-ups, SMEs, manufacturers, and service companies deploying know-how both across Australia and globally. In addition to developing a national hydrogen cluster, we currently have open a seed funding program for regional hydrogen technology clusters closing next Wednesday. NERA's CEO, Miranda Taylor, will be joining us later today and leading a panel discussion on clustering in today's last session of the summit. If you're interested in any of this or any other NERA insights or assistance, please visit nera.org.au. Also happy for people to connect with me directly on LinkedIn or by email at paul.hodgson@nera.org.au. We're here for you if you're ambitious, you want to contribute to Australia's position in the global energy environment, and you want to be successful, please get in touch. Now, on to today. So it's a marathon. It's about 7 hours. I'd encourage you to move at regular intervals, stay hydrated. There will be 2 20-minute formal breaks during the day, time to stretch the legs, perhaps grab a coffee or grab something to eat, depending on where you are. Could be lunch, could be dinner, could be a midnight snack. The plan will be for each presentation to run for about 10 to 15 minutes with time left for questions at the end. So please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. If you're wanting to chat, there's also a chat function. So I'd encourage you to chat amongst yourselves in the chat function, but please use the Q&A function for any questions. That'll make it easier for the chairs and the moderators and the facilitators of those sessions to be able to identify your question. Sorry in advance if you don't get to all of your questions. Please get in touch and follow up on people. I'm sure people will be able to respond after the event. And if you've got any issues and need assistance from Venkata and his team, please raise your hand as well, and Venkata will seek to solve those issues for you. After the 4 presentation-led sessions today, there'll be a panel session on startup success, followed by a pitching competition, which we're all very excited by, and finishing with a panel session on clusters, as I mentioned. I'll chair the first 2 sessions and hand over to Diane to chair the following 2 sessions. Then we'll both be back at the end of the day to wrap up. Okay, so let's get started. Session one. Session one today is the Global Hydrogen Energy and Technology Opportunity, and it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Jeremy Stone, Non-Executive Director, J-Power, with a presentation entitled Building a Global Hydrogen Economy, Creativity and Innovation Needed. Jeremy is a non-executive director, advisor and innovator with over 30 years of experience leading businesses and in the delivery of major infrastructure projects. He has held a variety of positions, including regional director for Asia and group manager of innovation and digital for a 10,000 strong global professional services company. He lived and worked in Asia and the UK for 14 years and has also delivered projects in the US, Middle East, Australia and China. He is a director of J-Power Latrobe Valley, a subsidiary of J-Power, one of Japan's largest utility companies and part of the hydrogen energy supply chain consortia. Remember to keep those questions coming in the Q&A function, and welcome, Jeremy. If you could share your screen, thanks, Jeremy. I really look forward to your presentation.
Yeah, thanks very much, Paul and Diane. Let me get this up and about. Going well. 1 second. Yeah. How's that looking, Paul? Okay.
Yep.
That looks great, Jeremy.
All right, thank you. We had some glitches before. So thank you and welcome. It's an honour to be presenting here today. I'm going to share some experiences I've had. And perhaps this presentation is really about being the first presentation, getting everyone sort of on the same page about the hydrogen economy and some of the opportunities which might exist for innovators and entrepreneurs and all businesses, in fact, to get involved in this very exciting business. So my career, looking back, has really been about growing businesses and growing people, in fact, through creativity, transformation, and innovation. And in fact, those three ingredients are really needed to start up a brand new economy like the hydrogen economy. So I'm very fortunate to be a non-executive director of J-Power, who are part of this world's first hydrogen energy supply chain project here in Victoria. For those of you who don't know J-Power, it's one of the largest utility companies in Japan, about 2.5 times the size of AGL, just to give some context, with about 25 gigawatts of generation capacity. In Japan, we're 50% renewable, and we continue to invest globally in a whole range of clean energy solutions like biomass, wind, hydro, solar, and of course hydrogen. So as I mentioned, this presentation, it's about 13 slides long. It will go no more than 10 to 15 minutes. And this is really going to be talking about the state of play globally as well as in Australia, and some of my thoughts about where people can get involved from a business perspective into this incredible new industry. I thought we might start, as we often do, with the need or the why. And this is really about climate change and trying to abate greenhouse gas emissions. And we've got a very mammoth task in front of us, as we all know. And hydrogen is one of those solutions. I mean, there's only one solution to this, but it's only one solution which is only in its early days of getting involved in clean energy. To the right of the screen, you'll see that the wind and solar take-up, which has been in Australia, which has been fantastic. But we need more clean solutions, and we need to tap into everything we possibly can, and we need to start going now. So our project actually started 5 or 6 years ago when Japan was really the only country, I guess, looking at hydrogen, given Japan was initially thinking about nuclear or increasing its nuclear capacity. And then with the Fukushima accident in 2011, they had to change direction, and hence hydrogen. But now there's about 22 countries with hydrogen strategies. Of course, Australia is one of them. Our hydrogen roadmap was released last December and accepted by all states and territories. And just a few weeks ago, the government released a low emissions technology statement, for which some of you have seen. So in that statement, they were actually had 140 technologies, I guess you could call them, they were looking at to work out, what we can go, what they can invest in moving forward. They had a number of ways to assess which of those 140 technologies were worth investing in. They're looking at their abatement potential. They're looking at the return on investment. They're looking at technology readiness. And out of that process, they came up with 5 priority stretch goals, as they call it. And on the right-hand side of the screen there, you'll see the 5 focus areas. So clean hydrogen, which is the topic of today's conversation, with the goal of getting $2 per kilo of hydrogen. Energy storage, low carbon materials such as aluminium and steel, CCS, and soil carbon. So that, as a starting point, gives some of you all a bit of a focus about where you can put your attention. There'll be a lot of money put behind that, $18 billion until 2030, put behind some of those technologies. So if that happens to be up your alley or your interest, that would be a good starting point. In terms of the hydrogen economy, this is courtesy of Australia's hydrogen roadmap. That gives a snapshot of really how it works. Right now, many of you may not know, but right now there's about 70 million tonnes of hydrogen produced per year. But unfortunately, most of that is not abated. So it releases about 800 million tonnes of CO2 into the air per year. It's about 1.5 times what Australia produces. So there's plenty of work in front of us, but the benefit is there is already knowledge about hydrogen supply chains. The issue is how can we replace that 70 million tonnes of unabated hydrogen, but also how can we increase its supply in a clean fashion? And to do that, we need the demand side, which is on the right-hand side of that image there. So it's not just used for ammonia, which is currently used for now predominantly, but it can be used for other industries, it can be used for transportation, it can be used for industrial uses and heating and cooling as well. On the left-hand side of the screen is really how it's produced. And I'll talk a bit later about this, but generally a lot of the topic has been about green hydrogen or blue hydrogen or whatever colours you want. Typically, it should be about the carbon abatement opportunity and what can be delivered now. So this hydrogen roadmap is technology agnostic. As long as it's deemed clean, it's deemed worthy of investment. And as I mentioned, I'll talk more about that later on. The Hydrogen Council has a vision of what hydrogen might look like in 2050. And they're talking about 18% globally, 18% of the energy demand, about 6 gigatons of CO2 abatement, about $2.5 trillion worth of hydrogen sales, and about 30 million jobs created. So quite a significant industry, but that's a long way away. That's 30 years away. So the question is, how can we get there even quicker than that? And I think that's going to be the challenge of us all, and how can we actually get the take up of hydrogen? And we're left with the chicken and the egg. So the reason I say that is a lot of talk and a lot of focus has been about hydrogen production. But in actual fact, we should be seriously considering about the hydrogen demand. How can we actually build up the hydrogen demand? Because we all know that with increased productivity and increased production, we can bring the cost down. But at the moment, the cost of clean hydrogen is a lot more than the currently produced hydrogen. The Hydrogen Council talks about blue hydrogen or hydrogen from fossil fuels with carbon capture and storage, about 30% more than existing hydrogen production unabated. Whilst green hydrogen or hydrogen from renewables is about 300% more. So these are large numbers, and we need to get over this bridge to enable the demand to pick up. So we'll talk a bit about some of those options and where we can get involved moving forward. So in my history and my knowledge, I think we can get there, but it's going to take some creativity and innovation. And I talk about creativity being a mindset of possibility and abundance and collaboration, rather than sort of scarcity and competition. We are in the early stages of a brand new industry, and I like the concept of NERA's concept of clusters. We need to bring people to come together to share and to connect and to actually leverage everyone's skills and potential coming together. And I think as a nation, as Australia, that's going to be one of our challenges going forward, where sometimes we get into competition with states and territories, but in actual fact, most of our competition is going to be from other countries, particularly if we're going to be pursuing, and we want to pursue, a hydrogen export opportunity for Australia. So that's something to consider as we go forward. And the other part is innovation. So we clearly need to innovate. And for me, innovation is delivering fresh ideas which create value. So the idea is good, but we've got to deliver these innovations. We have to deliver these ideas. And that is the challenging part. So the rest of the presentation is going to be drawing upon some existing projects and some knowledge I've garnered, which I'd like to share with you, and then we'll be open up to Q&A a bit later on. First of all, in my experience with innovation, I think it's worthwhile to look around and learn and be inspired what others have done and what other industries have done. In terms of hydrogen, one of the great industries to learn from, in my opinion, is the LNG market. So from the Australian context, we've gone from effectively zero to being one of the probably the world's largest LNG exporter in 40 years. But it took a long time to get going. And it took, a bold plan and a bold vision by the Western Australian government and the Australian government to underwrite the first offtake agreements from Western Australia to get it going. And you can see on the graph there on the left-hand side, it's taken close to 40 years to get there, but it's taken 20 or more years before we've got rapid growth. So the challenge for us is, what can we learn from LNG, and how can we convert a 40-year time frame into something like 20 years? I think that's the unanswered question right at the moment, but I think that's the opportunity we have, both for being involved in clean industry, but also more importantly, which is the why, how can we get CO2 reduced? So where can you get involved? So I've got a couple of slides here about opportunities where you can get involved. You may want to get involved in strategy. So strategy is really about, how does the hydrogen supply chain get involved with other industries? And you might find, and you might read about, these hydrogen hubs where potentially coexisting industries can actually form and wrap around the hydrogen production. And I think that's a really great opportunity. It's like the circular economy. In our project, which I'll talk about a little bit later, we obviously produce hydrogen, but our byproducts are nitrogen and CO2. But those byproducts from ours end up being feedstock for other industries like ammonia and urea, for example. So there gives us an opportunity to actually place coexisting industries wrapping around hydrogen to provide a very much a circular economy type clean energy future and industrial future going forward. So that may be something of great interest to some of the people on the webinar right now. We look at the producer, which is where most people are talking about at the moment. And we've got two ways of producing it. So on the bottom screen there, we've got renewables, whether it be wind or solar or biomass. It could be biomass as well, which provides the energy to drive the splitting of water through an electrolyzer into O2 and H2. So that is often called a green hydrogen. But blue hydrogen, or hydrogen with fossil fuel with carbon capture and storage, is another opportunity and has been around for some years. That's the project I'm involved with at the moment at Latrobe Valley. So on the left-hand side, you see the gasifier and the refining facility. So we take the coal at high pressure and high temperature, we extract out the hydrogen and we extract out the CO2 as a byproduct quite simply and easily. And in Latrobe Valley, just off the coast there, we have a huge carbon storage facility called CarbonNet. They've been developing for 10 years. So we're actually able to cost effectively and safely transfer our CO2, whatever's not used with any coexisting industry. Any excess CO2 can be taken off and injected deep below the ocean. A lot of people say carbon capture and storage doesn't work. We refute that. It's been around for 40 years successfully. There's about 20 existing CCS facilities around the world, 20 more in development. And in fact, the world's largest CCS facility is in Gorgon, just off the Western Australian coast, taking up to 4 million tonnes of CO2 per year. So I think, again, there's a lot more work to be done there. We can make that even better and cheaper and more efficient. But there's another area which requires some innovation and creativity. And there's the transport. So how do we transport hydrogen? In its gaseous form, it's not the best way to transport hydrogen, particularly if you want to have an international supply chain. So in our project, again, just to highlight our project up on the top of the screen, we liquefy hydrogen, and we've got Australia's world's first liquefaction facility at the Port of Hastings. That's already been built. It's being commissioned at the moment. And that will liquefy the hydrogen, so at minus 253 degrees centigrade, and the volume is reduced by 1/800th. So it gets it into a form which is far more efficient to transport. We have built the world's first liquid hydrogen carrier. You can see in the screen there in the middle. So that will arrive in, it's been launched, it's going through sea trials in Japan, and that will be in Australia in the first quarter of next year. On the right-hand side, the Port of Kobe is the unloading facility, again being built, and that will receive the hydrogen for distribution throughout Japan. So that's one method of transport. Again, very early days, a lot of innovation and creativity is needed to drive efficiency in that process. But equally, there are other ways of transporting hydrogen, and ammonia is one way, I guess a common way, given that it's inbuilt into the ammonia. But what it does require, once you've arrived at the port, is we need to split out the hydrogen from the ammonia, which takes energy. And interestingly enough, CSIRO are working on a membrane which they believe can do that splitting of hydrogen out of the ammonia very cost effectively. And then we talk about the users of hydrogen, or the demand of hydrogen, which I think really needs a lot of effort to actually get this hydrogen industry going. And up the top are vehicles. In my belief, heavy vehicles, back to base type vehicles are probably where it will start from a transportation sector. So buses and heavy trucks, where the battery electric vehicle may not be best given the size and weight of the battery. And also the hydrogen doesn't have the refueling infrastructure at the moment. So a back to base heavy vehicle situation is probably going to be the best. And you've seen California already implement regulations to drive that. I think by 2035, they want 50% of their heavy vehicles to be electric vehicles, whether it be battery electric vehicles or fuel cell electric vehicles. And down the bottom, and this ties into the technology statement which was released a few weeks ago by the federal government. There's opportunities to use hydrogen for steel production, given that they use a tremendous amount of coking coal in its current production. So there's a chance to have hydrogen for steel production. On the right hand side also what they call green ammonia, so using clean hydrogen to produce ammonia. So there's some immediate opportunities to boost. There are other opportunities, including injecting hydrogen into gas pipelines. And right now, there's a number of trials going on across Australia, and in fact around the world, to inject up to about 10% of hydrogen into existing gas pipelines. And 10% is accepted as there will be no negative impact on the appliances on the other end of the gas pipeline. So there's three areas which we think we can have hydrogen uptake.
Jeremy?
If you like to be involved in governance and seeing opportunities to be involved in governance, in Australia, we're working on a hydrogen certification scheme at the moment. So what will happen, the vision is any hydrogen produced, it will be tagged, knowing where it was produced, how it was produced, and what the carbon intensity per kilo of that hydrogen. So ultimately, the buyer of the hydrogen has confidence and it's transparent about what they're buying. So you could imagine, for example, right now we're at the petrol station where you go and buy petrol, you've got 98, 95 and 91. It's possible that there may be multiple forms of hydrogen with slightly different levels of CO2 intensity, and you let the buyer decide what they would like to buy and what price they're prepared to pay. So from an innovator's perspective, there will be opportunities to have online platforms and ways of connecting all this up to enable the end users to have, I guess, confidence into what they're buying and to know that there's a system in place and make it easy for them. So there's an opportunity there to get involved in governance.
Jeremy, I was wondering if would it be possible to finish up at that point so we've got a little bit of time for questions?
Yep. Well, this is the last slide. So all I was going to say that I think at the end of the day, we can get so wrapped up in hydrogen. We think it's about everything, but most of the people don't know about hydrogen. So I think the important point here is we have to bring the community along with us and undertake a range of activities to ensure that the community comes along with us.
Right.
That's it, Paul. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jeremy. Look, we'll go straight into our next presentation, and we've got quite a number of questions for you, Jeremy, already in the Q&A. So what we'll do is we'll go into the next presentation, and then we'll have a bit of time at the end. And then one of the things that will work well, Jeremy, is perhaps if there's questions that we can't answer live, that perhaps you could jump into the Q&A as well at the end of the session and engage with the audience. But thank you very much for that really great opening presentation. Really love to now introduce Kellie Charlesworth, Associate with Arup, who'll be presenting on hydrogen, the emerging vector. Kellie is an associate with Arup in the Australasia Environment and Resources team. She brings a passion for collaboration towards a sustainable future. She has a strong background in planning and approvals for large infrastructure planning and initiatives, and more recent focus on sustainability and business transition to a low carbon economy. She's had a lead role in many of Arup's hydrogen projects in the region including New Zealand's Green Hydrogen Vision and Hydrogen Hubs report for the Australian Hydrogen Strategy, and is an active member of the Australian Hydrogen Council. Kellie's recently been appointed as the Arup Energy Skills Leader for the Australasia region. Congratulations, Kellie, which means she has recently been spending more time thinking about the skills needed for the current and future market. This is going to be very timely for this discussion. Welcome, Kellie.
Thanks for that, Paul. I'll just share my screen and get going. Does that look right on the screen?
Yeah, that looks good. Although you can do
Yep.
no. Oh no, that's right. That's fine.
It's fine the way it is?
It looks good. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, great. Oh, well, thanks for the introduction, Paul, and to Paul and Diane and the team for bringing together this event. It's absolutely brilliant, and one that's focused on stimulating innovations and startups, which I think is pretty unique and great to see that happening. For those of you who don't know Arup, I'll just give a quick introduction. Arup is an international technical advisory and engineering firm headquartered in London. We're working on hydrogen projects around the world and other decarbonisation projects around the world. But I thought I would give you some insights on projects we're doing locally in Australia and New Zealand, as Paul mentioned, to give you an insight on where, you know, some of the current status is and the opportunities and barriers to development of a hydrogen economy. Also gives you a bit of insight on where you could get involved, and goes on from Jeremy's presentation, so hopefully not too much repetition in there. We tried to be coordinated. I would say the recent government announcements in terms of the technology roadmap and the hydrogen funding that's available through ARENA have been very encouraging, and the new remit of the CEFC, and this transformation into a green economic recovery post-COVID puts us in a good position to keep the momentum going. I'd say there is no silver bullet, but I'm sure hydrogen will play its part. So, and thanks to Jeremy for doing the heavy lifting on the 101 of hydrogen before I get started. Much appreciated. So I'm just going to try to fly through because I realise we're running out of time, but we've got just a quick slide on why hydrogen and why now. The whole total energy system approach and where hydrogen fits into there, and then some case studies for hydrogen hubs, which is some of the work we did with COAG, and how that fits in with the clusters that NERA are supporting on. So hydrogen, the emerging energy vector, what do we mean by that? So hydrogen isn't in itself, it's an energy carrier, I should say. It's not an energy source in itself. But in saying that, it has great potential to really complement where electricity can be in the market as well. We don't see any of these things as either or. It's very much what's this whole system going to look like together. And the benefits of hydrogen are that it can be produced without a carbon footprint. It can be transported over long distance, and think, so to Japan, for example, or South Korea, or to Germany, has a high energy density when compressed, like Jeremy was saying with the liquefied hydrogen, produces clean power and fuels, clean industrial feedstock. It's already used in feedstock at the moment, but it's not green, if we want to use that terminology. Versatility as an energy vector with wide application, and safety considerations similar to natural gas or petroleum. And I make that point there because that is a significant hurdle that does need to be overcome to achieve social license. And that's the group that I'm part of as part of the policy group and that social license group for the Australian Hydrogen Council. And we spend a lot of time thinking about how we're going to get over that hurdle because hydrogen has had a bit of a bad rap in the past.
Kellie.
So what's the yes?
Sorry, Kellie, I was just going to ask, we've had a couple of requests if you could put it on full screen mode. At the moment, people are seeing your current slide and the next slide. If they could just see the current
okay.
slide, it might be a little bit larger on the screen for people. So maybe in your display settings or just to have it as full as slideshow mode.
I thought it was in slideshow mode, sorry.
No, on the top.
Sorry, I can't. If someone's talking to me, I can't hear them properly.
Might be in the display settings, is it? Untick presenter mode. Someone's suggesting.
Untick presenter mode. Where is that? Sorry.
Can you click on the display settings over there? Over that, yeah.
Here?
Yes. Yep.
This one?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Apologies, everyone.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kellie. Thanks, everyone, for your assistance.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't. That's why I was asking, did it look all right? Because it didn't look all right on my screen. Is that looking good now?
That's great.
Perfect.
Perfect. Great.
Thank you.
All right. So what's the opportunity in Australia? There's benefit to Australia locally and through improved net exports. You have hydrogen, obviously, GDP growth, job creation, and that's direct and induced. And that's what we're talking about here with the opportunity for people as well. We can capitalise on Australia's abundant renewable energy resources. We can get that connection between the petrochemical, electricity, gas and transport sectors and start solving some of those problems for alternative fuels. Reduce geopolitical exposure. So at the moment, when you look at supply chain uncertainty and things that are happening in the world, being able to produce your own energy is a very strong driver. As Jeremy talked about, the ability to decarbonise those hard to abate sectors is vital. When you look at it, there's only so much of the world that can be electrified, so much of the energy system that can be electrified. What are we going to do to replace those other components that can't be easily or pragmatically electrified? And I'll talk about this a bit more later. The key driver of sustainability, source local produce. When shipping things a long distance, it tends to ruin your round trip efficiencies even more. So why now? First mover advantage is always talked about. You would say that there's global interest in hydrogen driven by really energy security needs, Japan, and decarbonisation agendas around the world, and also people looking at the new opportunity, what's going to be next. There's supply contracts already being signed, so things are actually happening. Why now for Australia? We want to, and for the world, we want to manage this transition. It needs to be a just transition from a fossil fuels, carbon intensive economy down the track. Many countries have set targets, for net zero. How are we going to get there with minimising that social and economic disruption and protecting the environment? And if we get in now, we have the improved ability to plan and develop new, safe and reliable infrastructure ahead of time, saving money. So a couple of years ago, ARP in the UK got together with a whole heap of industry players and government and said, all right, what's the new energy system got? What could it look like? It was an imagining of what the energy system could look like, and it's pretty intense when you look at it. And I'm not expecting everyone to look at every bit there. It's really just to say it is very complicated, and when you talk about changing parts within it, there's all the flow-on effects back and forth. But you also get, as Jeremy was saying, you also get that circular economy opportunities. Where can everything feed in together? What we're expecting to see over time is you're going to get changes in the primary energy sources, heading more towards renewables likely, energy transporters and carriers, local and more distributed energy transformations, other sectors evolving, and new energy business models. Things will be done differently, and we're in a transition towards that. So I thought it would be useful to just talk about the Australian Hydrogen Hub study that we did for the Australian National Hydrogen Strategy, as it looks at the way that the hydrogen economy might develop and give some guidance around that in Australia. And that really complements the work that NERA is doing with the clusters as well in supporting the growth from the bottom up in that way. What the hub study did is it was actually looking at what are the key ingredients really that would make sense for a hub to develop in a certain area. And that's both for an export solution as well as a domestic economy. There was two streams looked at there. And that was done by looking at what the pragmatic ingredients are, but also talking to a vast number of stakeholders. So everyone from government, industry leads, research, education, community members, and I'm missing someone there, but it covered a vast area. And what came out of it, you know, as everyone always wants a list at the end of the day, was some areas that, based on all those ingredients, looked like they had the potential. So you can see a list throughout Australia there. Excitingly, so this was about a year ago now that this was released, and the hydrogen strategy is gaining more momentum. And a recent announcement by our Energy Minister, Angus Taylor, just in the last couple of weeks, was that we're going to have some more investment from the government into, it sounds like a single hydrogen export hub with $70 million there, but there's more details we're hoping to get on that in the coming weeks. But just seeing that support from the government is very encouraging. So these are some of this is available in the public domain on the Australian Hydrogen Strategy site if you want to find this further. But these are some of the criteria that you'd look for in an export hub and in a domestic hub. Oh, sorry. Don't know how to go back. Oh. And, in there. And then I'll just say again, the secret sauce to all of that is you can have all those criteria, but if you don't have clusters of collaboration happening to build the skills, capacities and opportunities to take advantage of this, you'll have just single projects popping up all over the place that will take longer to establish, I believe. So I thought it might be useful just checking on the time to just go through how a hydrogen economy could develop. So this is just one scenario looking at how it can all fit in together, but it gives you the idea. So if we take a green hydrogen export opportunity, seeding the hydrogen economic development, as was one way that was touted originally. I think now it's more of a hybrid, but let's see. So you've got renewable energy, then you're going to have your power to gas, like your electrolyzer or conversion here. You're going to produce hydrogen, you're going to store it, and you're going to look at a way of transporting it. Now, Jeremy talked through the different ways that might occur, and there's lots of technology opportunity all the way through here for each of these individual pathways. And I wanted to just highlight the role of batteries in here for those that are on the call, because this is a talk about hydrogen, but all the other technology developments that we're going to have are going to make a massive difference to how quickly hydrogen can evolve as well. If you look at the role that batteries are going to play in renewable energy penetration into the grid, that's going to be vital for then getting, if we're looking at a green hydrogen option, for making that possible. There's also the benefits that hydrogen can have in long-term storage. So very much at the moment, batteries, we haven't got anything really that's servicing that seasonal storage economically. So if you want interseasonal storage, like they do in New Zealand, for example, where they're having a lot of dry winters and their pumped hydro isn't able to fulfill that need, they're looking for something that could be an interseasonal storage as the backup so they don't have to turn on the diesel generators. Then we talk about a domestic economy. And what does that mean? It means finding uses for hydrogen, producing it, and then finding uses for hydrogen in the local market. So you might be using it in hydrogen as industrial feedstock, which is already happening. Hydrogen for transport, we've got projects already on the go. And then you can use hydrogen for heat in buildings and other uses within the home and within commercial buildings as well. Then you've also got using your existing networks. We don't want to see stranded assets. We don't want to see, we want to see that just transition for the fossil fuel industry going through to into 250. So how do we have that involved as well? So you've got technologies like methane reforming, and then the carbon capture that Jeremy was talking about as well. And then you scale up and you keep going. And this is hydrogen Australia in the top 3 in the world. This is what it looks like. So that just shows you a way of how the hydrogen industry could be scaled up so that you do achieve hydrogen's role within, alongside electricity, alongside natural gas, with all these end uses and how it could play its role. How are we going to get there? We need that coordinated effort. So we need clear policy direction and targets. We're getting closer, but I'd say there's more that can be done there. Technology development, support through funding and tax initiatives. Review subsidy application and emission standards and targets. Obviously, if there's a price on carbon, that will drive things a certain way into the green sooner. Interaction between government departments, planning authorities and the private sector. And we really want to enable projects to proceed as quickly as they're able to, and provide at the right time, provide that input into the economy.
Kelly, can I ask, is that,
yep.
Sorry, Kellie, I was going to ask, is that an okay point to stop? I think, or have you got a couple more
Yes,
slides?
it is actually. It is, because that was just this final one, because the other ones I was just going to show some of the work we did in New Zealand. But this one I just thought it was worth saying with the uses of hydrogen. At the moment, we would consider that low regrets uses that people are already doing in terms of if you're making a decision is used in industrial facilities and in fleet and heavy transport applications. If you go right up to power generation and personal transport, there's other things in the market that might be able to do that better at the moment. And then if you're into buildings, heatings and industrial heat and processes, particularly with the industrial, there's so much, when you have a look at the investment that needs to be made to convert them over, they will need to be made on a case-by-case basis, very much so, when they come up for renewal. So I'll leave it at that one, Paul. Thank you.
No, fantastic. Thank you, Kellie, and thank you, Jeremy, for the first session. I know Jeremy's been on the Q&A diligently answering questions, and given that we're just about right on time, unfortunately without some live questions, Kellie, perhaps you could go onto the Q&A and if anyone's got any questions, there's a couple of questions sitting there already, but if there's some questions that you can answer on the Q&A with the audience members, that would be great, and then we might move straight into session 2. But look, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Kellie. A fantastic start. Really, I think very succinctly given the hydrogen opportunity that's available, which is exactly what we wanted at the start of this summit. Yeah, the questions are piling in there, Kellie. So if maybe you want to duck on over to the Q&A function.
All right, I'll get onto that. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Everyone. Yeah, thanks, Paul. And I'll continue to answer the questions, and feel free to get in touch with me on LinkedIn or something if you can't hear. I'm happy to answer the questions.
Okay, great, fantastic. Thank you very much for you both.